Detective Miller watched the grainy security camera footage for the 10th time. A typical subway mugger, a knife, and panicked commuters. But then he saw him. The old guitarist. It wasn't a punch or a kick. It was a fluid, 3-second sequence involving a wrist lock, a pressure point, and a disarm. It was a technique Miller had never seen in his 20 years on the force. Something he had only ever read about in classified intelligence briefings on one specific agency, Mossad. He picked up his phone and said, "Get me everything you can on the old man who plays Bach at the 5th Street station." Welcome to the unspoken chapter. Before we uncover the story hidden behind the music, tell us in the comments what city you're watching from today. And if you believe true strength often hides behind a gentle melody, hit that subscribe button and help us reveal the secrets of the silent. An hour earlier, the cold concrete walls of the 5th Street station were warmed by the notes pouring from Ari's guitar. Ari was a man in his 70s, with every line on his face telling a story, and eyes that held both weariness and a steel-like glint. For years, he had sat in the same corner, on the same wooden stool. He always wore a clean but old coat, and his fingers bore the calloused marks of an artist. He didn't play for money. His guitar case in front of him was always closed. He was there as if to nourish the station's soul, to add a moment of beauty to the metallic noise and haste. Most commuters didn't even notice him. He was a part of the city's chaos, a pleasant background music while waiting for a train. But those who stopped to listen realized he was no ordinary street musician. His fingers moved as if they knew the secrets of the strings, interpreting even the most complex classical pieces with a sorrow that seemed to come from the depths of his soul. The piece he was playing that day was one of Bach's cello suites, orderly, complex, and deeply moving. The rhythm of the station was as usual. A train would arrive with a metallic screech, a flood of people would pour out, and another would cram into the cars. In the midst of this tide, a young woman in her early 20s, looking at her phone with anxiety in her eyes, was trying to navigate the crowd. She didn't notice the hooded, sly-footed young man approaching her from behind. The young man cut her off in a more secluded corner of the platform. No one understood what was happening at first. The conversation, which began in whispers, suddenly turned to terror with the small, shiny knife the man pulled from his pocket. Seeing the woman freeze in fear, a few people backed away as if there were an invisible wall. No one wanted to intervene. This was the unwritten rule of the city. Don't get involved. It was at that moment the music stopped. The orderly harmony of Bach that had filled the station until that moment was replaced by a sudden and unsettling silence. Everyone's gaze shifted from the corner where the robbery was taking place to where the sound had ceased, to the old musician. Ari was slowly standing up. He leaned his guitar gently against the wall. There was no hurry in his movements, no panic, just a tranquility that came from years of experience. The mugger was annoyed by the distraction. "What's it to you, old man?" he hissed. "Mind your business, or you'll be the first to taste this knife." Ari didn't answer. He just kept walking. His steps were neither slow nor fast. They were measured, as if he wasn't calculating the distance between 2 points, but a situation and its outcome. The mugger got angry and brought the knife a little closer to the young woman's throat. One more step But he couldn't finish his sentence. Ari stopped just outside the threat range. Then he did something no one expected. He slowly raised his left hand, as if giving a greeting. The move was so unexpected and non-threatening that the mugger's brain hesitated for a moment. His eyes flickered to the old man's hand for a split second. This was the only moment Ari needed. In the blink of an eye, Ari took a step forward. His body moved with a fluidity that defied his age. He targeted the mugger's knife-wielding arm. But he didn't throw a punch or a strike. His hands were like a surgeon's scalpel. His right hand grasped the mugger's wrist, his thumb pressing on a junction of nerves. His left hand was placed under his elbow. This wasn't brute force. It was physics and anatomy. Like a lever system, he used the mugger's own strength against him. A momentary confusion appeared on the young man's face, followed by his eyes widening in unbearable pain. The fingers holding the knife went limp, as if they no longer belonged to his brain. The knife fell to the ground with a metallic clatter. In a continuous motion, Ari spun the mugger around and pushed him lightly against the wall. The young man collapsed to the ground, writhing in pain, without understanding what had happened. It was all over in less than 3 seconds. The silence in the station was now deepened by shock. Ari didn't look at the young man on the ground or the frozen woman. He calmly bent down and picked up the fallen knife. He held it not by the hilt, but by the blade with 2 fingers. An instinctive move to avoid leaving fingerprints. He tossed the knife into the nearest trash can. Then, as calmly as if he were on a Sunday morning stroll in the park, he returned to his stool. He picked up his guitar, paused for a moment, and then continued playing the Bach suite from where he had left off. The notes spread out like a blanket over the violence that had just occurred. Upstairs, in the security room, Detective Miller paused the recording. He let out a slow breath. Krav Maga, he whispered. But this wasn't the version taught at the police academy or demonstrated in gyms. This was an older, more lethal version. Lavan, he said to himself, pure, direct, and ruthless, just like in the books. Instead of reaching for his radio, Miller grabbed his jacket and headed out the door. This wasn't a situation for patrol officers. This required talking to a ghost. When Miller got down to the platform, everything was back to normal. The young woman had boarded the first train and left, and the mugger had long since disappeared into the crowd. All that remained was an old man sitting in his corner, playing his guitar. Miller approached slowly. He waited for the music to end. When the last note had faded into the air, he said, "Sir, may I have a moment of your time?" Ari looked up. His eyes were weighing Miller. This wasn't the gaze of a criminal or an innocent citizen. It was the gaze of a professional analyzing a situation, measuring the threat level. "Is there a problem, officer?" he asked. His voice was as calm as his music. "There was an incident here just now," Miller said, getting straight to the point. "An attempted robbery. We saw everything on the cameras, including your intervention. Not a single muscle in Ari's face changed. A young man stumbled and dropped what he was holding," he said. "I helped him, that's all." Miller smiled. "The stumble I saw didn't quite look like that. Where did you learn that move? In the army?" "I've never been in the army," Ari said, with no hint of a lie. "I'm just a musician." Miller knew the man was bluffing, but he also sensed that pushing him would be pointless. This man wasn't someone who would talk in an interrogation room. In the depths of his eyes was the steel will of someone who had seen more than Miller could ever imagine. "What's your name, sir?" he asked. "Ben Cohen," the old man said. One of the most common names in the country. It was like building a haystack to look for a needle. Miller paused for a moment. "All right, Mr. Cohen, then let me just thank you. You were that woman's hero today." A faint shadow passed over Ari's face. "I'm no hero, officer," he said. "The heroes I knew usually didn't make it home." After these words, he picked up his guitar again and began to play. This meant the conversation was over. Miller, realizing he wouldn't get anything more, turned and left the station. But he hadn't given up. Back at the precinct, the first thing he did was run the name Ben Cohen. Thousands of results came up. His next step was to upload the old man's image from the security camera into the facial recognition system. When the results came back, Miller wasn't surprised. No match found. The man did not exist in official records. He was a ghost. Miller had one last option. It was an unofficial one that could jeopardize his career. He called an old friend who worked at Interpol. "David," he said, "I'm going to send you a video." "Just a sequence of movements. Can you tell me what it is?" 20 minutes later, his phone rang. David's voice was more tense than usual. "Jack, where did you get this video?" "A street musician," Miller said. There was a moment of silence on the line. "Jack, listen to me. Delete this video immediately. We never had this conversation. Don't look for this man again. If you found a ghost, let him be a ghost. Some people are only safe when they don't exist. Do you understand?" Miller understood. The advice went against every instinct he had as a detective. His job was to uncover the truth, to put names to faces and solve puzzles. But David's warning wasn't a suggestion. It was an order from a world with different rules, a world where the highest honor was to be forgotten. With a heavy sigh, Miller dragged the video file to the trash bin and permanently deleted it. For the first time in his career, he was actively burying a story instead of digging one up. The next morning, on his way to work, he stopped at the 5th Street station. He had given in to his curiosity. He looked at the corner where Ari always sat. The corner was empty. The wooden stool was gone. The guitar case was gone. The corner was just a corner again, cold, bare concrete. The air felt different, stripped of its soul. Without the music, the normal sounds of the station, the screech of train wheels, the hollow echo of announcements, seemed louder, harsher. He briefly considered asking the station attendant if he'd seen the musician, but one look at the man's indifferent face told him it was useless. Ari hadn't just left. He had erased his own presence. Miller stood there waiting for his train, staring at the empty corner. Amidst the city's noise, he thought of the silence he had heard that day, and the power behind that silence. He thought about the thousands of faces he passed every day. The taxi driver, the street vendor, the janitor sweeping the floors. How many of them were like Ari? How many were ghosts, carrying the weight of a past no one could ever know, their skills dormant until the one moment they were needed? His perception of the city he had sworn to protect had changed forever. He realized he wasn't just policing the visible world of criminals and victims, but also walking through an invisible world of silent guardians. The world keeps spinning thanks to these nameless heroes who walk among us, protecting us, but never wanting to be known. This story shows that even art and music can sometimes be a camouflage for the deadliest secrets. Sometimes the gentlest hands have fought the toughest battles. So now I ask you, have you ever had a moment where you thought an ordinary-looking person might have an extraordinary past? Share the stories of the nameless heroes around you in the comments, because these silent heroes don't expect applause, but they deserve to be remembered. If this story touched your soul, subscribe to The Unspoken Chapter and help us keep these silent legends alive. See you in the next episode. And remember, the next time you listen to a street musician, think not only of the music, but also of the story behind the hands that play it.